Number 1. The Accident. At a really young age, my parents began letting me stay home alone. We were pretty poor, so both had to work. I was given a key to the house. Whenever I would get home from school, I would get inside, lock the door, and wait for my parents to come home from work. I was never supposed to answer the door for anyone. I was 11 when this happened. I was walking home from school. There was already a storm coming, too. The black clouds were slowly inching their way across the sky. I knew I'd have enough time to get home before it began pouring down, though. And I did. Although, when I did get home, it was already pretty dark, due to the cloud cover. It was about 3:30 p.m. when the rain finally began falling. The winds were heavy. The thunder and lightning were worse than I could recall any other time. Unlike many people, I never liked storms, so I was pretty scared. About 4:30 p.m., I heard a knock at the door. I was always instructed not to open the door for anyone, nor to let anyone know I was home alone. So I ignored it. But this was also the first time anyone had come knocking when I was alone, so I also didn't really have experience handling it. And the knocking continued for a few minutes. Whoever it was didn't seem like they were giving up. After a while, though, the stranger used their fingers and opened the mail slot in the door. "Hey kid, I know you're in there. Your parents have been in a car accident due to the storm. They sent me to come pick you up and take you to the hospital." I got up and walked into the hallway. I knew I was supposed to ignore the person, but I hadn't figured if something had happened to my parents. I was concerned. I stood a few feet away from the door. The guy was crouching down, looking through the mail slot, and he saw me there. "Come on, kid," the guy insisted. "Both your parents are really hurt. Come on out so I can get you to the hospital before anything bad happens to them." An 11-year-old's mind, doesn't always know what to do. I didn't respond. I just stood there and wondered what I should do. I was worried about my parents, of course, but I also was told never to let anyone know I was home alone, nor let anyone in the house. "Come on, kid," the guy yelled, this time sounding angry and impatient. "If you don't come with me right now, your parents might die. You don't want your parents to die, do you?" Wrong move, buddy. One way to terrify me is to yell at me. Now I was terrified. I ran away from the door. I went up to my bedroom, ran into the closet and hid in there. I was aware of some pounding on the door and some yelling, but it didn't last much longer. I must have been in that closet for nearly 2 hours, but it didn't seem like it. I heard someone enter my bedroom, and I nearly screamed. The doorknob turned and opened, and there was my mom, completely unharmed, and wondering why I was hiding in the closet. I explained what happened. It was all a lie, although we don't know it was him for sure. A man was arrested later on for several kidnappings in the area. My parents were never hurt. This guy was just trying to get me to open the door and go with him. I was 11, and 11-year-olds can be gullible. Thank God we could be scared, too. Number 2. Stormy Pizza. I don't know exactly why it is, but it seems that people are much more likely to order delivery pizza when it's stormy outside. Snowstorms, thunderstorms, it doesn't really matter. I often joke that they make bets to see if the delivery drivers have a wreck, or something in the bad weather. The weirdest delivery I ever had to make happened during one of the nastiest thunderstorms I had ever experienced. It was dark, except for when the white lightning lit up the entire outside. The winds had to be a good 40 miles per hour at one point. I got an order for a pizza to be delivered to an address that I had never been to before. I even remember the pizza to this day, too. Large, half pepperoni, and half mushroom and black olive. When I walked out to my car with the box, the wind almost took the pizza and delivered it for me. It was a hard drive with the rain and the wind. The wipers were on full speed, and I still had nearly no visibility. It took all my strength to keep driving straight. To make matters worse, when I arrived at the address, the house was completely dark. This story happened in the 80s, before everyone paid for their pizza online. I quickly expected it to be a prank. You know, trick the pizza driver to go out in the nasty weather. But as I pulled into the driveway, I noticed someone was on the porch, rocking back and forth in a rocking chair. I found this odd. I left my car lights on, and I got out of the car. I suppose the lights were a bad idea, really. I ran up onto the porch to get out of the rain. It was only when I was wiping the rain out of my eyes that I realized this was not a real person sitting in the rocking chair. It was like a Halloween dummy or something. Some crypt keeper-looking character that was only rocking because of the wind. There was a sign tied to it that said, "Bring the pizza around back." I wasn't about to do this, though. Instead, I went over to the door and knocked on it. There was no answer, so I knocked again. Louder this time. Still no answer. I was about to knock for a third and final time when I saw, out of the corner of my eye, someone peek around the corner of the house and quickly said, "Psst! Bring the pizza around back," before disappearing once again behind the side of the house. There were no lights at all, other than from my car. I honestly stood there with a dumb look on my face before deciding what to do. Right then, I saw a hand reach around and tap loudly on the side of the house. Looking back at it, it was beckoning me. This was too weird. It was something right out of a horror film. I took the pizza, hurried back to my car, and slammed the door. Right when I began to pull out, 4 huge guys came from the side of the house. "He's leaving!" one of them yelled, and they came rushing towards the car. However, I was in a car, and this wasn't a horror movie, so I was able to pull out and away from them. I heard a loud crashing sound, as something hit my back window and shattered it. I just put the pedal to the metal and got out of there. My first thoughts were that this was a prank. However, I thought differently when they broke my back window. I reported it to the police. Apparently, an old senior couple lived in that house, and they were on vacation. The house had not been broken into. I'll never know really what those guys were up to. Maybe it's better that way. Number 3. My neighbor. I know a lot of people have a neighbor, or at least someone who lives in their neighborhood. That's a little weird. When I was growing up, there was this guy who lived down the block that always gave me the creeps. The kids had stories about him also. As an adult, I'd like to think that the stories weren't true. But some of the strange things I've seen this man do make it hard for me to believe that they were false. Just to give you a few examples. Several times I saw him flying a kite in the middle of the night. He just ran down the street at around midnight, trying to get his kite up in the air. That just always seemed so odd to me. And he'd watch you. I know some people sit on their porches and just watch as people go by, but this guy took it a big step further. If you were walking down the sidewalk in front of his house, his eyes and head would follow you. Then, once you passed by his house, he'd get up off the porch, walk down to the sidewalk, and follow you until you turned onto another street. Then he'd stand at that street corner watching, but he'd never follow you after that first turn. My weirdest experience with him happened when I was 16 years old. I had been staying over at my friend Chuck's house playing video games. We lost track of time, and it was about midnight when I first saw a streak of lightning light up the sky, and of course it was followed by a loud bang of thunder. I realized that I had to try and get home before the rain started down. My parents had long since gone to bed, and Chuck's parents were never too keen on others spending the night. It wasn't too long after I'd set out on my way that it began raining. It was light at first, enough to make me worry, but when it began raining harder, I decided I was going to get soaked. so I might as well try to not let it bother me. Of course, on the way, I walked by that strange old man's house. Like usual, he was sitting on the porch even though it was late and pouring. Like usual, he never took his eyes off me while I walked by. But he surprised me when he got off the porch, without an umbrella or anything, and began following me in the pouring rain. I was already on edge about the storm, and this was just going to make it worse. I tried to ignore the guy and figured once I turned, he would stop following me anyway. But the anxiety caused by the loud and booming lightning didn't really lend itself to me feeling relaxed. I turned down my street, and after going a little ways down it, I snuck a peek back over my shoulder. He hadn't stopped. The weirdo was still following me down my own street. From there I just hurried. I didn't look back again. I just wanted to get into my house, out of the rain, and away from this strange man. The problem with running in the rain, however, is of course that the ground is very slippery. I tried to cut through my yard, but I slipped on some mud and went crashing headfirst into the ground. I groaned for a moment, but that groan quickly became a cry when I felt hands on me. The man grabbed me and pulled me over onto my back. He then began slapping me in the face hard, screaming, "Stay the hell off of my street! Stay the hell off of my street!" Over and over again. He had these long, ragged fingernails, and he actually scratched deep gashes in my face. I didn't know what else to do other than scream for help. I don't know if it was my screams or the cracks of thunder that woke my father up, but he came out of the house, saw what was going on, and ran to grab the guy off me. The guy kept babbling, "He was on my street. Keep him off of my street." The police arrested the guy, and I had to go to the emergency room. The guy was found mentally unfit to stand trial, and was committed to a psychiatric hospital. I never saw him again. At least for real. I thought I saw his face, though, in every thunderstorm since. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. This is a pretty awesome day for me, although it hasn't happened as I am recording this. I'm about to hit 20,000 subscribers. It's been a long road for me. A few of my good narrator friends got here before I did, and I've always been very, very happy for them. But this means a lot to me, as only 2 years ago, I never could have imagined in a million years that this would happen to me. I set out to make this channel, expecting possibly 500 subscribers at the most, and for this to be a little occasional hobby. But what I found was an opportunity to provide original horror content to an audience that has given me a lot of support and friendship along the way. I can't wait to see what happens next. I want to thank everybody who is subscribed and supports my videos. In the meantime, if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please consider hitting the subscribe button below, or the icon of Ichigo that will appear at the end of this closing. Feel free to leave a comment to let me know what you thought of the video, and consider sharing it with someone you think might enjoy it. Feel free to follow Ichigo and myself on Facebook and Twitter. If you have a story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please send it to the address included in the description. In the meantime, please don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.